I had somebody email me the other day asking if I was going to make a video about this year's World Series in total, because they'd only been following loosely and wanted to get a sense of what happened. This made me think, perhaps I should go back and cover each game in painstaking detail. And then I realized, I actually already did that, putting out an individual breakdown on every single contest. So I decided to combine them all into one long single video, serving as a comprehensive look at what will go down, to me, as the greatest World Series ever played from the perspective of the actual contents of the games themselves. For example, 2016 was perhaps more notable, but not every game was quite so electric as with 2025. With that being said, I hope you enjoy, and have a great rest of your day. If you listen to a lot of the discourse online, specifically around budget spending, this was going to be a sweep for the Dodgers, with them winning every game 20-0, embarrassing the Blue Jays right out of the sport entirely. But, well, that's not how Game 1 went at all, and it was for two reasons principally that perfectly describe two separate states of these ball clubs. The first being the fact that Toronto has an insanely deep lineup, and the second being that the Dodgers bullpen, especially with the loss of Alex Vesia before the series even started, hopefully everything's all good with him and his family by the way, is, we'll call it, underpowered right now, and it resulted in a game, and specifically an inning, the likes of which we hadn't seen in 57 years. Things certainly did not get off to the best start for the Blue Jays, who had to endure a ton of traffic in the early going, as the Dodgers registered 7 separate base runners between the second and third innings. Yet, because of a bend but don't break performance from rookie Trey Savage, LA would only come out of it with 2 runs, keeping things well within reach for Toronto's high-powered offense, especially with the return of Bo Bichette, who actually made a really nice play defensively in that third inning at second base, a position at which he had never appeared before. This takes us to the bottom of the 4th, which is when the Blue Jays finally managed to get to Blake Snell, a pitcher who had essentially been unhittable for the entire postseason up to that point, first getting a 334-foot single to right field off the bat of Alejandro Kirk. Then, just one pitch later, a 423-foot tank to center field from Dalton Varsho, which was actually the first home run given up to a lefty by Snell all season, tying the game with one swing of the bat. It wouldn't be until the 6th inning that anything would happen offensively for either club afterwards, as in that frame, Blake loaded the bases with nobody out courtesy of a walk, single, and hit by pitch, departing the contest for righty Emmett Sheehan, a pitcher coming off a stretch of giving up at least 1 run in 3 prior postseason appearances, none of which came in that LCS. And it wouldn't get any better for him here. Ernie Clement, nearly immediately, sliced a single to center field to score the go-ahead run. Nathan Lucas then fought his way through a 9-pitch at-bat to draw a walk, followed by 9-hitter Andres Jimenez getting behind 0-2 in the count, yet coming back to single home another run. Sheehan would then record his first and only out of the night versus George Springer, a force out fielded by Mookie Betts. This meant, at least at the time, that if LA could find a way to get out of further trouble, their own offense, chock full of future Hall of Famers at the top, could still firmly be in this one. The Blue Jays, eager to land the knockout punch, pinch hit Addison Barger for Davis Schneider, a move that prompted Dave Roberts to turn to Anthony Banda. This was the moment of the contest, and wouldn't you know it, Toronto would come out on top with a historic pinch hit grand slam from Addison, the first off-the-bench grand salami in World Series history, as well as the first overall in Blue Jays World Series history. This made the score 9-2, but somehow they weren't done yet, as 2 batters later, after a Vladimir Guerrero single and IKF flyout, Kirk would get his second hit of the inning, this time a home run to center field, cementing a 9-run frame. This, according to Jeff Passan on Twitter, was the most runs scored in a single inning of a World Series game since Detroit put up a 10 spot in 1968. 57 years ago. And that was pretty much curtains. Public enemy number 1 north of the border, Shohei, would launch his 6th home run of the postseason in the 7th, but besides that, nothing else notable would occur, with Mookie striking out versus Eric Lauer to officially wrap up a blowout victory for the Blue Jays, a big first step in their attempt to claim their first World Series championship since 1993. One of the main critiques you hear from older school fans about the game today is the fact that starting pitchers don't really go past 5 or 6 innings all that much, largely because of pitch limits and analytical matchups. Well, those people have to be absolutely thrilled right now with the last 2 starts from Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who's managed to be so dominant and efficient simultaneously that it allowed him to do something we hadn't seen in over 2 decades, helping his team to a crucial split north of the border. This one got started pretty fast offensively for both teams, as the Dodgers came out and, with 2 outs in the top of the 1st, registered a double from Freddie Freeman and single from Will Smith. Boom. 1-0 lead. The Blue Jays were quick to respond, getting runners on first and third with nobody out courtesy of a Springer extra base hit and Nathan Lucas single. It was looking like it was going to get ugly real fast, but this is when Yoshinobu clamped things down, striking out the hottest hitter of the postseason, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., on a nasty curveball, then getting Alejandro Kirk to line out and Dalton Varsho to take a cold strike 3. At this point, Toronto had made him work for 23 pitches, so even if they didn't score a run, there was a small victory in that. For the next several frames, nothing much would happen besides this single on a pop pop-up deflected by Freddie Freeman, one of the few hits we've ever seen in recorded MLB history that had a 0 expected batting average. Though, thanks to the excellent defensive play of Mookie Betts, this one wouldn't come back to haunt the Dodgers. That takes us to the bottom of the third, when George Springer notched his second brutally painful hit by pitch of the postseason, this one up and in that got him on the hand. Thankfully, just like before, he was okay, and even managed to stay in this one and go to third on a line drive off the wall in left field from Vladimir Guerrero Jr., a ball crushed out at 114 miles an hour. This set the Blue Jays up perfectly for what they've become known for more than anything else: productive at-bats, which is what Kirk would register to tie the game with the sacrifice fly. Shortly after, Varsho would ground out to end the inning. Again, it's important to note here that Yamamoto was at nearly 50 pitches through 3. A long start didn't seem to be in the cards. It would be at this point, though, that the Japanese righty would manage to lock in, not only recording easy outs, but doing so quickly, throwing no more than 3 pitches to each hitter to retire his next 6 batters faced, before recording an 11-pitch inning in the 6th that featured a strikeout of the very contact-oriented Kirk. The entire nature of this game would change decidedly in the top of the 7th, when, with 1 out, Will Smith launched a 3-2 pitch out to left field, a no-doubter that gave his team the lead, and Smith his second go-ahead RBI of the night. Kevin Gausman himself had been incredibly impressive in this one up to that point, striking out 6 batters while retiring the Dodgers largely pretty easily. Things weren't going to get any easier for the veteran righty, at least in this frame, as following a strikeout of Teoscar Hernandez, Max Muncy would manage to smoke a home run of his own, this one much shallower but still over the fence in left field. Another quiet bottom of that frame was followed by LA tacking on 2 more, this time on a wild pitch from Jeff Hoffman with the bases loaded, then a force out that was probably improperly handled by Andres Jimenez, who had a near guaranteed force out at home plate, yet decided to try to go with the long underhanded flip of a potential double play ball. This was Smith's 3rd RBI of the day, by the way. All of that gave Dave Roberts a little cushion with which to ride with Yoshi a little bit longer on, and boy would he take that inch and turn it into a mile, striking out the side in order in the 8th, punctuated with a 97-mile-per-hour heater at the lower rail. This brings us to the bottom of the 9th, with him attempting to do something that we hadn't seen in almost a quarter century, and he would get a little help with 1 out, as Kirk was flat out robbed of a single by defensive replacement Justin Dean. That meant that when Dalton Varsho popped up a 97-mile-per-hour fastball to third base, the game was officially over, cementing the hurler as the first pitcher since 2001 Curt Schilling with back-to-back complete games, as well as the first pitcher to throw a complete game in the World Series since Johnny Cueto in 2015, and the first to have multiple completed contests in the postseason since Madison Bumgarner in 2014. That's some high-ranking company there, but I'm pretty sure the most important stat to him in this one was that W, helping the Dodgers to head back to LA with the series tied instead of being down big. The intro to this video reminds me a little bit of the Shohei vid I did about a week ago, which, by the way, he's a central character in this one too, where I basically was just flabbergasted by the insane nature of what I had just witnessed. And that certainly applies here too. I mean, 18 innings of World Series baseball that broke more records than I could possibly list, while ending in perhaps the most epic way possible. Buckle up as we work our way there in what will be a long, and I do mean long, winding journey. Things began with a little history to start the night, as after Tyler Glasnow retired the side in order, Max Scherzer became the second player in MLB history to play in a World Series game with 4 different teams, and he showed why in that very frame, as after giving up a leadoff double to Ohtani, a hit that would actually end up being pretty important statistically in this one, he worked out of this mini jam without letting the Japanese lefty even move up a base, striking out Will Smith to end the frame. This brings us to our first real weird moment of the night, when, leading off the second, Bo Bichette lined a single into center field, putting himself on base for Dalton Varsho, who, on a 3-1, took a fastball well above the zone. But due to a late call from home plate umpire Mark Wegner, both Dalton and Bo became confused, believing that the hitter had actually walked. This allowed Glasnow, after a second of confusion himself, to flip over to first base to pick off Bichette. I think we can say here pretty decidedly that Wegner should have been quicker with that call and probably never should have made it in the first place. But Bo also shouldn't have taken his eye off the ball in the way that he did, with the same being true for the Jays' first base coach as well. This would prove to be pretty big, as despite the Blue Jays managing to get a walk and single following, they couldn't score after Addison Barger struck out and Ernie Clement lined out. And the Dodgers would capitalize on this missed opportunity, wrestling momentum into their corner with a no-doubt blast off the bat of Teoscar Hernandez, a 1-0 lead that would double one frame later when Shohei Ohtani hit his 7th home run of the postseason, a line drive missile down the right field line. Things could have been even worse for Toronto, who, with 2 outs, watched Will Smith line a 1-hopper to right field, a play that would, fortunately for them, see Freddie Freeman get thrown out handedly at the plate on a near 100-mile-per-hour toss from Addison Barger. Now it was Toronto's turn to build some momentum, getting a leadoff walk, then an error from Tommy Edman to put 2 guys on, bringing Alejandro Kirk to the dish, and on the first pitch of his AB, he delivered, smacking his 5th home run of the postseason just over the wall in left center. Their lead would double just a few batters later when Andres Gimenez launched a sacrifice fly to center field. But if you thought things were anywhere close to being over, here's a hint. We weren't even 1/3 of the way through this one at this point, with the yo-yo then moving in LA's direction in the bottom of the 5th, when Ohtani registered his 3rd extra base hit of the night off of Mason Fluharty, a double to the gap in left center that scored Kike Hernandez from first base. After Mookie Betts was retired, it was Freddie Freeman's turn to come through, lining a single past the outstretched glove of Guerrero Jr., nodding things back up. Things would then stay relatively quiet until the top of the 7th, when George Springer left the contest after some uncomfortability on a foul ball. Then with 2 outs, Vladdy flipped a single into center field, setting things up for Bo Bichette to line a fastball down the right field line, a play that would normally result in a 1st and 3rd situation. But the big base runner wasn't satisfied with not scoring, racing all the way around from first on a single to score the go-ahead run. Would this be the straw that broke the Dodgers' back? Well, to put it simply, no, not at all. Courtesy of their MVP Unicorn, who came to the plate with 1 out in the bottom of that frame and got a fastball at 98 right down the middle, crushing it out to left center field for his 4th extra base hit in the game, making him the first player to have 3 multi-homer games in one postseason, as well as tying him for the most extra base hits in a World Series game, with the dude who played almost 120 years ago. Once again, we were square. This is where the bullpen wars would really start, and oh boy would they be something to behold, with the first pressure-packed situation worked out of being from Roki Sasaki, who managed to barely secure this ground ball back to the mound in the 8th before flipping low to Freddie Freeman, who made the soft pick for the out. Then in the 9th, with Roki still on the hill, Varsho lined a ball off the glove of Freddie, sending Tommy Edman, who had made that error earlier in the game, sliding into the outfield grass before making a perfect 1-hop throw to third base, nabbing Isaiah Kiner-Falefa trying to advance. Shohei would then reach for his 5th consecutive at-bat with an intentional walk in the bottom of the 9th. A bold strategy, but one that would pay off just 1 pitch later when he was thrown out attempting to steal second because his foot came off the bag, a play that certainly frustrated his own manager. Toronto would then see their 2nd runner in as many innings gunned out on the bases in the top of the 10th, when Davis Schneider was thrown out on another perfect relay throw from Edman, this time on a double to the right field corner. Jeff Hoffman would work his own 2nd consecutive scoreless frame in the 10th, this time allowing 2 guys to get on, but not advance past that. Then it was Derek Fisher's turn to do the same in the 11th, sending us into one of our most pressure-packed innings of the entire night, the top of the 12th, when with 2 outs and 2 guys on, Max Muncy first attempted to make this incredibly high IQ play at third base, one that wouldn't end up working out when it was overturned upon review. This brought Hall of Fame lefty Clayton Kershaw to the mound to attempt to work out of a bases-loaded situation, and he would do just that when Nathan Lucas chased what certainly would have been a go-ahead ball 4, instead dribbling a little grounder towards second base that Edman made a glove flip on, his 3rd potential game-saving play in the last 4 frames. Eric Lauer would come out for the Blue Jays in the 12th, beginning a hero's journey that wouldn't end until much later, along the way bending multiple times but not breaking, first by inducing a pop-up with the winning run at third base in the 13th, then after an intentional walk of Shohei and Mookie Betts, a fly out to the warning track from Freddie Freeman. After a 2nd consecutive scoreless frame from Eduardo Enriquez, he then got back on the hill and immediately gave up a long fly ball to Will Smith to left center field, one that looked like, for a split second, it was going to end the contest, but Varsho managed to make the play probably 5 feet or so from danger. Then with a couple guys on and Miguel Rojas at the plate, Ernie Clement would help out as well, making a nice play to end the frame on an intentional 1-hop bounce to first base. This is where our 2nd big bullpen hero of the night, Will Klein, would enter the contest, a pitcher with a career ERA of 5.16 through 22 games, essentially being on this roster for mop-up situations, a role that you wouldn't have been able to identify based on his performance in this one, as he came out and proceeded to throw 4 consecutive innings of scoreless baseball, striking out 5 hitters along the way while giving up just a single hit. At the same time, Lauer would complete 4 2/3 of his own, while adding 1 more intentional walk of Shohei. Trust me, I'll get to why that's important in a second. The veteran lefty would finally depart in the 17th, giving way to Brendan Little, a guy who had already blown 1 game this postseason. But to his credit, he would pitch a scoreless 17th, while having the dubious honor of walking Ohtani intentionally, for the 4th time. This allowed the hitter to tie the all-time record for reaching base in a single game, outside of even postseason play, at 9, simultaneously setting the record for a World Series contest. After Klein pitched out of a jam in the 18th with a strikeout, getting Kike Hernandez insanely hyped up in the process, Little will be out there again, with starters Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Shane Bieber warming up in their respective bullpens. But neither would have to throw even a single pitch, because on a 3-2 to postseason legend Freeman, he would get a sinker right down the middle and launch it over the head of a leaping Dalton in center field to end what might have been the greatest game in World Series history, one that featured so many records being broken I couldn't even hope to list them all, including on this very blast from Freddie, as he became the first player in World Series history with multiple walk-off homers in a career. This little tidbit was pointed out by Sarah Langs on Twitter, who I've cited many times on this channel and in this video, and I just wanted to take one last second here to emphasize just how great of a follow she is. What a fantastic overall contest, one that arguably in my opinion neither team deserved to lose, and one that will be remembered for the rest of the time humans play baseball at a professional level. Game 3 of this year's World Series had to have been one of the most difficult losses to stomach in the history of the playoffs, period. Not just because of how much was required by both teams in terms of bullpen investment and the sheer volume of innings played, but the emotional toll exacted by losing a contest like that on a walk-off homer. Now, to me, this makes what Toronto just did in Game 4 one of the most impressive bounce-back victories you'll ever see, because they not only emerged victorious, but did so in convincing fashion. Shohei Ohtani, the dude who got on base a postseason record 9 times the night before, was on the hill for LA, having at this point not pitched in a game in 11 days. And you could see some pretty obvious rust in the first inning, when after retiring the first 2 guys pretty easily, he walked Bo Bichette despite getting ahead of him 1-2, then went to a 3-2 count to Addison Barger before giving up a weakly hit single. He would manage to bounce back versus Alejandro Kirk, getting a pop-up on the infield, but on a pitch that Kirk probably crushes in most circumstances. He certainly looked better in the second, retiring the Blue Jays 1-2-3 on just 7 pitches. Meanwhile, starter Shane Bieber on the other side followed a quiet opening frame by getting into a little trouble in the second, walking Max Muncy on 4 pitches, the last of which was nowhere close, then giving up a single to Tommy Edman on a fastball right down the middle. This meant that when Kike Hernandez flew a ball 356 feet to right field, Muncy would come in easily to score with the game's first run. Again, with the absolute nightmare that was last night's loss, it was worth wondering how the team would respond to getting down early in the game following. But they made it clear they couldn't care less about this narrative when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. crushed his 7th home run of the postseason in the very next frame, a 2-run shot that immediately gave his squad the lead. This is where both pitchers would clamp down decidedly, with neither giving up more than 1 base runner in a frame afterward going into the 6th, with Ohtani even managing to strike out the side in the 4th when 2 of the 3 guys he faced, in Kirk and Ernie Clement, don't strike out all that often. Bieber, meanwhile, actually got the Japanese superstar to strike out twice at the plate himself. First on a nasty changeup, then on a perfectly placed knuckle curve right around the outside corner. Our first real action since the 3rd would come in the bottom of the 6th, when, following another scoreless frame from Shohei, Bieber got into some hot water, giving up 3 straight line drives to the heart of the LA order, 2 of which managed to find green grass, with only a nice play from Dalton Varsho keeping the bases from being loaded. This would be the end of Shane's night, giving way to lefty Mason Fluharty, a pitcher who had let the previous game get tied by allowing 2 inherited base runners to score. But he would be nails in this one, inducing a flyout from Muncy, then striking out the switch-hitting Edman on 3 pitches. I think to many surprise, Ohtani was back out there to start the top of the 7th, as while he was at 90 pitches, the dude had just played 18 innings the night before. This decision to leave him in would immediately turn sour for Dave Roberts, who watched as Varsho led off with a single before Clement doubled to the left center field gap, putting runners on 2nd and 3rd with nobody out. That signaled the end of the night for Ohtani, giving way to lefty Anthony Banda, who then fought his way through an 8-pitch at-bat to 8-hitter Andres Jimenez before the infielder flipped a breaking ball the other way for an RBI single. Just quintessential Blue Jays baseball, not trying to crush the cover off the ball, just making contact in big spots. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa was due up next, and on a 3-1, lined a ball to third baseman Muncy, who caught it and then, in nearly one motion, fired to first base to nab Jimenez. Huge double play, right? Well, not according to New York, who apparently saw enough on this play to overturn it, putting runners back on the corners with just 1 out. And this proved pretty huge, as pinch hitter Ty France, who came in for George Springer after his injury last night, came through with a simple ground ball to the right side, pushing across Toronto's 4th run of the night. It also crystallized Ohtani's line at 6 innings with 4 earned runs, the most he had allowed in a game since August 20th. However, it was still within a save opportunity for LA. This is when Roberts decided to turn to righty Blake Trinan, who's had just an atrocious season in 2025 overall, and it would continue here, giving up a line drive off the wall in left field, then a ground ball past a sliding Mookie Betts. This allowed 2 more runs to come in to score, and from here it never really felt all that close again. The Dodgers would manage to push across 1 in the 9th on an Edman ground ball, but that was it, seeing Alex Call fly out to left field to seal one of the most impressive bounce-back victories I've ever seen. For the vast majority of this contest, the Blue Jays just looked in control, and with that rally in the 7th, they really pulled away, guaranteeing we will see at least 1 more game in Canada this season. If you were to just examine the score on the surface of Game 5, you probably wouldn't have been able to detect exactly how historic this contest was, mostly on the mound, but also in the batter's box as well, as in this contest, we saw no less than 8 separate records be broken, with pretty much all of them coming at the expense of the Dodgers. We wouldn't have to wait long for our first one, as on the very first offering of the game, Davis Schneider launched a home run over the fence in left field, giving his team a 1-0 lead. Vladdy Jr. just 2 pitches later followed this blast with one of his own, with his traveling about 20 feet further, but the result being the same, making the Blue Jays the first team ever to lead off a World Series game with back-to-back homers, and only the second team ever to do so in the postseason with the 2002 Oakland A's. Their next feat would be a little more niche, also coming in the first when, with 1 out, Dalton Varsho grounded a ball hard to second base, where it was turned into a double play by Tommy Edman and Mookie Betts. Or was it? After a challenge, it was overturned, prolonging the inning for another 2 pitches before Varsho attempted to steal second base, getting thrown out on a perfect toss from Will Smith. But we still weren't done yet, as this play was again challenged by the Blue Jays, making it 2 straight official plays that were sent to the review room on their behalf. And while this one would stand, this gave them the interesting distinction of being the first team ever to put up back-to-back home runs and challenges in a single frame. Don't worry, the records will get a little less niche than that. From here, it was the Trey Savage show for the next 3.5 innings, with him at one point striking out 5 consecutive batters between the first and third innings, only giving up a single hit in this time, a home run to Kike Hernandez, though he would end that same third inning with a strikeout of Shohei, his 6th to that point. In the fourth, Teoscar Hernandez would register another fielding low light when he let this ball get past him and all the way to the right field corner on a slide, leading to a triple that would eventually be cashed in by Ernie Clement on a sacrifice fly, growing our separation back to 2 runs. 2 more strikeouts from Savage in the fourth was followed by another couple in the fifth, giving the rookie 10 Ks through his first 5 innings at this point. He would get a little help in the sixth, with Shohei Ohtani being robbed of a hit by Addison Barger, despite crushing this ball 117 miles an hour to the gap. After a Will Smith K, Mookie Betts, who's having a really tough World Series, would ground out to end that frame. This is when things would get a little out of control for the Dodgers, who watched as Barger singled to lead off the 7th, then made his way to third on 2 separate wild pitches from Snell, with a field out and walk mixed in there as well. After a Schneider K, Edgardo Enriquez was brought in to face Vladdy Jr., and on a 3-2, he would take a fastball well away, with the pitch sailing to the backstop, saddling the Dodgers with their 3rd wild pitch of the inning, scoring Barger. This made them, according to Jesse Rogers on Twitter, the first team in World Series history with 3 wild pitches in a single frame. The nightmare would continue 5 pitches later, when Bo Bichette lined a single into right field for a little more insurance. After LA finally managed to end the inning, Savage would come back out for one final time, striking out Freddie Freeman, then inducing a Tommy Edman double play after a Hernandez single, ending his night with 7 innings pitched, 3 hits allowed, 0 walks, and 12 strikeouts. This leads us to our next batch of records, the first one being pointed out by Codify, being that he was the youngest pitcher in MLB history to strike out at least 12 batters in a World Series game, being 3 years younger than Ed Walsh, who set the mark 119 years ago. Then, per Sarah Langs, the rookie righty also set the record for the most swings and misses by a pitcher ever recorded in a World Series game, and the most strikeouts for somebody who didn't walk even a single batter. Those don't even include the qualification that he's a rookie, just for pitchers overall. Yet we still weren't done, as the Blue Jays would get another run in the 8th with the help of another wild pitch, this one from Anthony Banda, which broke the all-time record for wild pitches in a single World Series game at 4, with this run eventually being pushed across on a single from Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. A quiet final 2 frames from the Dodgers offense officially sealed this one as a victory for the Birds, who added one final historical mark to their trophy case on the last strikeout of the game, being that they had saddled the Dodgers with the title of being the first team in World Series history to record less than 5 hits in the same game where they struck out 15 or more times. We will now head back to Toronto on Friday with the momentum firmly swung in the Blue Jays' direction. For 8 innings, last night's Game 6 was a pretty typical pitching-heavy contest, defined by the performances of its 2 starters principally, both of which only gave up runs in the 3rd inning of this one. But in the 9th, we would see 2 plays that transformed this one into something that was anything but normal, with an extremely heads-up play followed just shortly after by one of the worst base running mistakes we have seen in MLB history. But we got to get there first. Kevin Gausman was on the mound for his 2nd outing of the World Series, looking to build on a previously impressive effort, as was Yoshinobu Yamamoto, fresh off of not only his 2nd straight complete game, but also offering a pitch during the marathon that was Game 3. Both would be putting up their absolute A-game to start the night, with Gausman striking out the side in order in the first, while swinging, before Yoshi hopped out there and faced the minimum in his half, managing to induce Vladdy Jr. to hit into a double play after Max Muncy made a fielding error. A quiet second was followed by the only inning that would see runs be scored for either squad, as with 1 out in the 3rd, Tommy Edman laced a double down the right field line, after Miguel Rojas was called down on strikes for what was, to that point, Kevin's 7th strikeout of the night. Shohei Ohtani would be intentionally walked, bringing the clutch hitting Will Smith to the plate, and he would deliver, flying a ball into the corner in left field to score the game's first run. Even still, the Dodgers to this point in the series hadn't managed to score more than 2 runs in any individual frame. A crazy stat that probably needed to be corrected if they wanted to have a chance to win this one. And that's exactly what they would do here, as after a Freddie Freeman walk, Mookie Betts would come through with an absolutely massive 2-run single. After Hernandez struck out, it was Toronto's turn to make some noise, getting a leadoff double from Addison Barger. Then, with 2 outs, a hobbled George Springer strolled to the plate, and on a 3-0 decided to take a hack, lining a cutter to the gap in right center for an RBI single. All of a sudden, the Blue Jays were within 2 again. It was from here we wouldn't see anything in the way of traffic until the bottom of the 6th inning, with neither team managing to register more than 1 base runner in any individual frame in this time. Of course, it was Vladdy who actually got something going once again for the Blue Jays, lining a ball down the left field line, despite it being in a funky location, getting himself in a scoring position for Bo Bichette, who managed to work a 7-pitch at-bat and route to a walk. This brought the go-ahead run to the plate in the form of Dalton Varsho. I think it was pretty clear by now that Yoshi was running a little bit out of gas, but Dave Roberts saw fit to leave him in to face the lefty, and this decision paid off, as Yamamoto would go on to strike him out on 4 pitches. This ended his night with a line of 6 innings pitched, with only 6 base runners given up, 1 run, and 6 strikeouts. Gausman too would depart following that same inning, with his line being impressive as well, at 6 innings with 8 strikeouts and only 3 earned runs. Now it was up to both bullpens, with each doing their jobs despite working into some notable jams, including Justin Robleski stranding a 2-out double from Ernie Clement, Sir Anthony Dominguez striking out Teoscar Hernandez with the bases loaded, then Roki Sasaki managing to retire Varsho once again with 2 guys on. Little side note here, but there was a call that was missed to Vladdy Jr. on a 1-2 pitch that could have completely changed this contest, as the big righty would go on to walk. And as someone who was watching it live, I was just glad that didn't happen. After Chris Bassett retired the Dodgers in order in the top half, we would go to the bottom of the 9th with the Blue Jays looking to muster some kind of offensive follow-through in a way they hadn't for basically this entire game besides that Springer swing. And they would immediately get some help, as on an 0-2 pitch leading off, Alejandro Kirk would get plunked by a splitter, being then promptly removed for pinch runner Miles Straw. This takes us to our first controversial play of the night, when Addison Barger crushed a ball to the left center field gap, only to see it get stuck in the wall, prompting Justin Dean to throw his hands in the air and call for a ground rule double, which he would get. Now, I've seen quite a few people online saying that this is a ridiculous ruling and that he should have just fielded the ball, but I have to say, as somebody who played baseball for a large portion of my life, those people don't know what they're talking about. From a young age, you are taught that if a ball gets stuck anywhere on the field, you do not touch it, because if you do, you run the risk of it being called a live ball, and the base runners advancing much more than they might otherwise. And this certainly would have been relevant in this case, as it probably would have resulted in a run and potentially Barger being on third base. It was the right call for both Dean and the umpiring crew. Still, Toronto was set up to potentially tie the contest, and Dave Roberts decided to take action, turning to veteran Tyler Glasnow to attempt to save his team's entire season. And Tyler couldn't have had a much better start than a 1-pitch pop-out from Ernie Clement, forcing the Jays now to probably need at least a base hit to send this one to extras. And for a split second on the 1-0 to Andres Jimenez, it looked like they might get just that, when the middle infielder lined a ball to left field. But thanks to a good jump from Kike Hernandez, it wouldn't fall. It was then something truly unexpected happened. Barger was thrown out attempting to get back to second base, leading to one of the most disastrous base running mistakes in the history of Major League Baseball. Not only because of the situation, being that it was the 9th inning of a potential World Series clinching Game 6, but also because George Springer was due up next. And even if he was going to be intentionally walked, you still would have had Nathan Lucas coming to the plate only needing a single to tie it. In case you think I'm being a little harsh on the dude on what was, admittedly, a pretty tough play to read, check out what he himself had to say about the situation via a story from Jesse Rogers, being, quote, "I was pretty surprised he got to it. Off the bat, I thought it was going to be right over the shortstop's head. I didn't think it was going to travel that far. It was kind of a bad read." I'm not one to try to rake anybody over the coals, but I will say, if Toronto can't come back and win Game 7, they might spend this next offseason and much of the coming years wondering what might have happened had he managed to just stick a little closer around the bag. Well guys, here we are, the final game recap of the 2025 MLB season. Buckle up, because it was a doozy of a Game 7 of the World Series that will easily go down as one of the most heartbreaking contests in the history of the sport for the Blue Jays, as well as one of the most clutch performances from the Dodgers. With that being said, let's hop right into it. The first notable play of this contest would be in the bottom of the first, when George Springer led off with a single to left field. After a Nathan Lucas strikeout, it was Vladdy Jr.'s turn to hit. working a 3-2 count before taking a fastball over the low and outside corner. As Springer was in motion, the veteran was thrown out easily at second base. In fact, probably much easier than he should have been because he just stopped running about halfway to the bag, I guess assuming it was a ball. This would be one of many off things that would happen offensively for the Jays in this one. They would have another chance in the bottom of the second when they got 2 guys on with nobody out. Then, after Alejandro Kirk and Dalton Varsho were retired, got a single from Ernie Clement. This featured another one of the exact moments I just said, as through no real fault of his own, Bo Bichette, who had drawn the leadoff walk, couldn't manage to score here because of his unfortunate injury that he was still playing through. Andres Jimenez would strike out shortly after, having them come away with absolutely nothing. It would be in the third, after the Dodgers went down quietly once again, having registered basically zero offensive pressure to this point for veteran Max Scherzer. Springer would lead off with another hit, then eventually make his way all the way to third base following a bunt and wild pitch. This led to a Vladdy Jr. intentional walk, bringing Bichette back to the plate, and the righty promptly made Dave Roberts pay for this decision by crushing a 442-foot missile to center field, getting his team out to a solid 3-0 lead. The Dodgers would manage to chip away in the fourth, loading the bases before getting a sacrifice fly from Teoscar Hernandez, but that was all they could do. A little scruffle would ensue in the bottom half of that frame when Jimenez was hit by a pitch from Justin Robleski, a situation that seemed to boil over largely just because of the tension of playing in a Game 7 versus anything rational, as there was zero chance there was any intent behind that. Tyler Glasnow would come in and manage to retire Vladdy Jr. to strand 2 guys on eventually. Louis Varland would do the same in the top of the 5th, after Scherzer departed with a guy on, bending but not breaking on an eventual inning-ending flyout to center field from Freddie Freeman. Another chip-away run from the Dodgers in the 6th, again on a sacrifice fly, was answered by a Jimenez double, with the 2 super teams trading runs, along with keeping a runner on second with nobody out for Toronto. This, to me, was the turning point in the entire contest, as Tyler Glasnow, the guy who had managed to close out Game 6, locked the rest of the inning down, retiring the heart of their order without giving up another run. It was at this point Trey Savage was brought in to help close things out, doing his job in the 7th by inducing an inning-ending double play turned nicely by Vladdy, then retiring Mookie Betts to lead off the 8th. But he too would be snake-bitten by a chip-away run, this time on a home run from Muncy, prompting John Schneider to go to Jeff Hoffman to close out the frame, which he did successfully, putting the Blue Jays just 3 outs away from their first World Series title since 1993. And for a second in the bottom half, it seemed like they were going to add on, getting a leadoff double from Ernie Clement, his 30th hit of the postseason, breaking the all-time record. But, much like in the latter half of that 6th, they wouldn't be able to move him up from here, seeing George Springer and David Schneider be set down on strikes by Blake Snell. This takes us to the top of the 9th, LA's potential last at-bats of the season. After Kike Hernandez struck out on a slider in the dirt, it was looking awful bleak. It was then that something completely unexpected happened. Rojas worked Hoffman to a 3-2 count, then on the 7th pitch of his at-bat, got a hanging slider right down the middle, and crushed it out to left field for his first home run in over a month. All of a sudden, we were tied up. Would this manage to deflate the Jays, who had just come oh so close to the pinnacle? Well, for a second in the bottom of the 9th, it didn't seem so, as they managed to get 2 guys on with just 1 out, prompting Roberts to bring in Game 6 starter Yoshinobu Yamamoto to try to keep the Dodgers season alive. And things wouldn't begin well, with him plunking Alejandro Kirk, loading the bases with just 1 out. This meant all Toronto needed was a fly ball somewhere, a little pop-up over the drawn-in infield. Just pretty much anything other than a ground ball or strikeout from Dalton Varsho. But the veteran lefty couldn't manage to come through, instead tapping a ball at 77 miles an hour that was fielded on a great play by Rojas, who then threw to the plate just ahead of a pinch-running IKF. Even though it was reviewed, the call would stand. Still, Ernie Clement was coming to the plate, Mr. Base Knock himself, and on the first pitch of his AB, it seemed like he might come through, flying a ball 366 feet to left center field, even managing to induce a little confusion between Kike Hernandez and Andy Pages, which resulted in a leaping attempt and collision. Yet, somehow, through all of that, the ball was secured by Pages, meaning we would see extra innings for the 2nd time in this fall classic. The Dodgers would basically do exactly what the Blue Jays did the inning before in the 10th, loading the bases with 1 out before seeing Andy ground into a force out, then Kike get thrown out at first base on a bang-bang play that ended up being challenged, but upheld. After a scoreless bottom, we were headed to the 11th. 2 quick outs were then recorded by veteran starter Shane Bieber, bringing Will Smith to the plate, who, on a 2-0 pitch, would get a hanging slider right down the middle, and not miss it, crushing it out to left field for his 2nd go-ahead home run of the series. And yet, even then, the Blue Jays didn't seem out of it, as they managed to get a leadoff double from Guerrero in their half. The tying run was just 180 feet away, then 90 when IKF bunted him over to third. After an uncompetitive walk to Addison Barger, it was Alejandro Kirk's turn to try to come through one more time for his squad. A fly ball pretty much anywhere, a line drive, heck, even a strikeout would still prolong things for one more batter at least. The only thing he couldn't do was what he ended up doing, grounding a ball to Mookie Betts, who grabbed it, stepped on second, and threw to first, sealing what has to be the most heartbreaking loss I've ever seen live for an MLB team. To get as close as Toronto did, having the Dodgers on the ropes for basically the entirety of Game 7, only to lose after squandering what felt like a near infinite number of opportunities, has to hurt like nothing else. To the Dodgers, I just have to say that was one of the most impressive displays of resiliency going the other direction as well, never giving up, never saying die, and eventually coming out as the first back-to-back champions since the New York Yankees in the late 1990s. Alright everybody, if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching, and if you did, consider checking out any of these other videos on your screen right now for other content just like this. Also, if you ever see anything you'd like to see me detail in the video, feel free to reach out to my email, basebpoet@gmail.com, and if I end up using your idea, I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for watching, have a great rest of your day.